Okay, so types of problems that I've seen on the ACT. They are going to give you a determinant, and then they tell you what that determinant equals. However, as you guys will notice, they don't fully tell you what the determinant is because they throw an x in there for us. Okay, and so what they ask you to do on the ACT is they'll ask you what's this value for x. Okay, so we've got our determinant. We know what our determinant equals. So essentially, we know that we can turn this determinant by multiplying its diagonals into a string, which would equal 19. And then it's just going to be solving an equation. So when you guys get to these problems like this and what's going to be on your homework, you're going to start out figuring out what this determinant is. So I'm going to take 3 times 5. Oh, wow, that parentheses did something weird there. Sorry. 3 times 5 minus, remember it's always a minus sign, and then I need to take x minus 1 times 2. Okay? Now I'm going to write the 2 out in front and the x minus 1 back behind, just because we're obviously going to have to distribute at this spot, and we're more used to distributing with the number out in front. You can have the 2 back behind and distribute everything just the same, but we're used to seeing it like this, so I'm going to write it like that. Okay? And now that we found what that determinant is, we know that that determinant equals 19. Okay? So I've got this long equation now that's going to allow me to solve for my x value. 3 and 5 is going to give me 15. Okay? Now I want you guys to notice here, this negative and that 2, really, that would be a negative 2 times x minus 1. So I'm going to distribute in the negative and the 2, which gives me a negative 2x. And then you're going to have a negative 2 times a negative 1, which gives me a positive 2, equals 19. Okay? From here, I hope you guys are starting to realize, hey, this is just an equation. I know how to solve those. Okay, I've got negative 2x plus 17 equals 19. Okay, I'm just solving, going down through and solving, so minus 17 to both sides. I get a negative 2x equals 2. Divide both sides by negative 2, and I get that x equals negative 1. And if that's a question on the ACT, you're just going to find negative 1, and you're going to circle it. Okay? So when you guys get these problems where they've got an x in it, okay, the first step is just to set up your equation. Do your main diagonal times your other diagonal, and then it equals 19, and then you're just going down through and solving. Now, they can get a little bit more difficult. Okay, so let's try one like on this next slide here. Maybe. If I click through some stuff. Eventually, I'm sure we'll get there. Oh, I thought I deleted all that. I guess I didn't. Okay, so here's another practice. Okay, if you guys want, go ahead and pause this one and see if you can figure out what you're doing on it. I think you guys should be able to at least start it. Okay, you might need some help on the middle steps of it. Okay, but essentially I've got a determinant there, and there's a whole lot of x's. And they're trying to have us figure out what is the value for x. That's what the ACT question would be. What does x equal? Okay, so pause it, try and get it started, see what you guys can do. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and explain it. We're going to start with our main diagonal. And I'm going to take x times x. Okay, minus, it's always a minus, x times 2. And then remember, this determinant equals 8. So I'm just going to say that it equals 8 there. Okay, again, I think this is probably, you guys know what you're doing here. X times x, well, it's going to give me an x squared. I've got an x times 2, which we would normally write as 2x, and then there's a minus in between, and that equals 8. Now, here's the part where I predict that some of you guys might be stuck. Okay, so for this problem here, I have an x squared minus 2x equals 8. X squared and x. How do I solve an equation with an x squared and an x? I hope you guys are saying the F word, factoring. Ha 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 ha. Remember, if we have an x squared and an x, we're going to have to factor to solve these. I told you guys factoring was never going away. Okay, so we got an x squared minus 2x equals 8. Before I can factor, remember it has to equal 0. So my first step for this is to subtract 8, which gives me an x squared minus 2x minus 8 equals 0. Okay, now this is set up so that I can factor. Remember, there's a 1 out in front. 1 times 8. What is 1 times 8? Well, that gives me 8. I need factors of 8 that will subtract. Factors of 8 that would subtract to give me 2. So 2 and 4 would be my factors. I'm going to get an x squared. I've got a 2x, a 4x, minus 8. Okay, remember that minus sign there. That minus sign also tells us that we need one of these to be positive and one to be negative. Okay, I need it to equal a negative 2x. So in order for that to happen, I'd have to have a negative 4 and a positive 2. Okay, factor by grouping. What can I pull out of these? Well, I can pull an x out. Left with an x plus 2. Factor by grouping. What can I pull out of these? A negative 4. Left with an x plus 2. Okay. Remember, all along this is equaling 0, 2. So my two factors are x minus 4 and x plus 2 equals 0. Once I get it factored, we set each factor equal to 0. X plus 2 equals 0. Gives me x equals negative 2. X minus 4 equals 0. Gives me x equals 4. So for this question, x equals negative 2 and 4. Okay, now the ACT does throw twists in there, so a potential twist that you could see on this problem is the ACT could say, your spot for A is negative 2, B is 4, C is 5, D is 6, and E is none of those answers are right. Okay, and you guys might be confused. Make sure you read through the question, because I have seen an ACT question where what it says is, what is the positive value for X? So if the ACT said, what is the positive value for X, that would work. Well, you would have to choose 4, because negative 2 is negative. That wouldn't be the correct answer. Okay, so that's an example of how to solve a couple of those ACT questions that you could see. I believe I have 4 of them on there on your guys' homework for you guys to practice. Okay, the only thing we have left to do is I'm going to show you guys how you can use these 2x2 determinants so that you can solve systems of equations with them.